Welcome to Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, the podcast that gives you an unfiltered, behind-the-scenes look at what it's really like being a woman in the middle who's over 50 and following her entrepreneurial dreams. Grab a superhero cape, girlfriend, because you deserve one. I'm your host, Master Certified Life Coach and Midlife Mentor, Suzy Rosenstein, and I am excited to inspire you with interviews that feature all of this midlife amazingness. Let's go. Hey there, welcome back to the show. We have another really exciting interview ahead of us today about how to upgrade your life. Today, you're going to be meeting Jackie Ulmer, a woman in the middle entrepreneur who focuses on coaching on peak performance habits to achieve whatever you want in any area of your life. Welcome to the show, Jackie. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Welcome to you too, Suzy, and all of our listeners. And thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. And I love that you live someplace that I really don't know much about. So that's always fun too. Just the little chats I love having with guests just before we get started. So good. Okay, so I know we're going to have a great conversation today about your midlife entrepreneur story. We're going to be talking about your business and what's going really well, and also what midlife issues might be getting in your way to some extent and maybe challenging for you a little bit here and there, or maybe a lot, you'll tell me, as well in your life, as well as being a business owner. So let's get started with how old you are, how long you've been an entrepreneur, and exactly what you're doing right now that's so exciting. Take it away.
Awesome. Well, I just turned 60 myself, or as I like to say, sexty.
Happy birthday.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I have been a business owner since 1994. So coming up on, how many years is that? 30? Yeah, coming up on 30 years. It'll be 30 years in January. And I started, like many people, I stuck my toe in the world of network marketing. And I always like to say, I was one of those that came in with my arms a little bit crossed. I kind of thought that was something you did when you couldn't get a real job or whatever. But I was a fairly new stay-home mom. And I have always said I wasn't a great tiddlywinks mom. I loved being a mom. I wanted to be home. But there were pieces of it that I didn't totally love. And we didn't have the internet back then and social media, and there weren't forums to talk about that. And I kept thinking, what's wrong with me? So I really wanted to have my own business, but it needed to be very specific. I'm married to an airline pilot, so I really wanted something with extreme flexibility that I could work around his schedule, around a baby's schedule, but I wasn't looking for a hobby income either. And when I really opened up my mind to network marketing and all that it had to offer, I thought, wow, okay, now that I have educated myself and understand this better, I think I've got something here. So that was the start almost 30 years ago. Since that time, I took my business online in 1999. I thought I was late to the game then. I'm finding out I was a pioneer, although some people call me a dinosaur, which it kind of feels that way now, all these years later. And that just really opened up a million different areas. Pivoted into coaching, worked with real estate agents, have done a lot of different fun things over the course of the last 30 years.
Wow. And then what happened? What was the bridge between that and becoming the kind of coach that you are today?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Once it was kind of one of those things. I took my business online, and then I started being contacted by people outside of my organization and even outside of my company saying, how do we do this thing called the internet? Can you teach us? Will you coach me? And it was kind of like, looking over my shoulder thinking, well, I guess, I'm figuring it out as I go along too, but sure. And so I slowly stuck my foot in and started coaching for free and then charging for coaching and then thinking, I'm not certified. Can I really be doing this? And of course you can. There's no requirement on that. If you could teach someone how to do anything, you can teach them and get paid for it. And over time, that just segued into a lot of different things. Network marketing companies started hiring me to come and speak at their conferences, to train their people, leaders, all of that. And then out of the blue, I was contacted by a real estate company to come and teach them social media and online marketing because this thing called Zillow had come along and was totally disrupting the real estate space. And I even said, I don't know anything about real estate except that I own some. They were like, we don't need you to know anything about real estate. We want you to teach us, the internet and marketing and meeting people. And so it segued into that. And then over time, as a coach, I started realizing, guess what? Real life and business intersect. And so what I was finding, especially because a lot of my target audience have been women, because I'm one, my husband doesn't support me in my business, or how do I balance the stress of being a mom and my business? All of these life coaching things really started coming in. So I added my life coaching certification to it because I realized in order to be successful working them into the business side of things, we really needed to grab hold of the personal stuff too. And over time, I added nutritional coaching because I'm passionate about that, helping people really intersect all the areas of their life so that they can really live their best life. And ultimately, it evolved to habits because what I realized more than anything, we don't get our goals, we get our habits. I don't care if they're relationship habits, business habits, health and nutrition habits, weight loss habits, workout habits, spiritual habits. Your habits are what make and break you in this world. So I help people upgrade in whatever area they want by taking a look at the habits they are currently engaged in and then really working them to define what needs to shift.
So good and so important. Now, how did you realize that being a pilot's wife was affecting the decisions you were making about your direction?
Well, oh gosh, that's a great question. I mean, it's kind of funny. There's so many things about the airline industry. I come from the airline industry as well. That's where I got my start. That's where I met him. But there are so many analogies within the airline world that fit perfectly. Put your own oxygen mask on first. You're going to have blue skies and turbulent skies, uncharted destinations. I mean, there are so many great things that, make it easy to do that. But that's one thing that I learned about my life, not only in aviation myself, but also being married. It is full of pivots and it's full of uncertainty, if you will. And again, not that it's exclusive to that lifestyle by any means, but as a pilot wife, we do experience times of loneliness, holidays where they're not home, missed celebrations. They're supposed to get home at 6:00 on Tuesday night and they get weather delayed somewhere. And now they're not home until, Wednesday morning, or they get rescheduled, a lot of things like that. So really figuring out flexibility, figuring out how you're going to cope with those things and show up and not blow up is a big, big part of it.
Oh, thank you for putting the context on because, I get on a plane, but I really don't know any pilots. And I don't know much about the lifestyle, but as you were talking, I could totally see like it's definitely part of your life. And I think part of some other careers too, but to really get your head around it, you probably don't realize all of the nooks and crannies of what's going to be going on in your life when you get into that life.
You don't. I feel like I had a little better advantage because I came from that profession. So I was used to the irregular schedules and a lot of different things. And to me, actually, I loved that. I love a very non-traditional lifestyle. I love not having Monday through Friday. Well, it used to be 8 to 5 and now it's everything else. And it's kind of funny. I have a daughter who's very entrepreneurial as well. And I think about it. I mean, she graduated college, got a job, and 30 days later called me and said, "Mom, they want me to work like Monday through Friday, 8 to noon. It was a part-time job." And I was like, oh, wow, poor you. Like in the history of the whole world, I can't imagine anybody ever having to stick to a schedule. But then I realized she grew up with two very non-traditional parents. I had owned my own business since before she was born. So I set my own schedule. I was there in the mornings. I was there in the afternoons. I was the tennis driving mom. I was all the things. And so she really wasn't used to what that looked like. She had a father who flew Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. He used to go on Fridays and pick them up, take them to lunch from school. A lot of things that other kids didn't experience. So looking back at first, I was kind of like, oh, come on. And then I thought, well, okay, she kind of comes by that honestly. You don't know what you don't know.
Ooh, what a fun observation. Yeah. But it's interesting with the work that you're doing, focusing in on habits. I know a lot of us associate our success with habits based on regularity, and it becomes an easy excuse.
Yes, it does. And I love a schedule too. I mean, I have a morning routine. I love doing all that. But I guess maybe because of my background and also because I'm very goal oriented and, we can make excuses or we can make reasons and we can pivot whenever we want. And it's all just our own thinking that's ultimately going to take us there. So you learn that yeah, if you usually do your 30-minute walk at 8 in the morning and now something's come along, you can still get that done at 1. You may have to shift some things, but it's possible. And ultimately, at the end of it, I always feel like the way you feel about yourself when you get to check that box off and be accomplished is everything to not only set you up for future success, but just change everything, the way you show up for the other people in your life, the way you show up for everything.
Agreed. And, you know, one of the things you pointed out in your application was the way you were describing distraction and challenge to focus. And this becomes such a huge issue in midlife. I hear it a lot. I'm constantly distracted by squirrels. Oh, there's one now. We have black squirrels in Canada. I don't know if you have them where you live.
We
No,
don't.
it's like
We have the brown squirrels.
so these are black. And where I grew up, they were gray squirrels in the Philadelphia area. And here there's an occasional gray squirrel. But anyway, the squirrels are everywhere, luring us with their fascinating behavior. So tell me a little bit about how constraining and focusing is a challenge for you now.
Well, it still is. In fact, in some ways, more than ever. And I think a couple of things come into play with that. There are 2 stories that I often hear with women in midlife. One of them is, what do I have to share? What do I have to give to the world? Who's going to listen to me? You know, oh, I've been just a mom for however long, or all those different things. And yet we all have so many gifts and talents by the time we're at this point in life. We have weathered so many storms. We have experienced so many different things. We have a rich body of work that we can put out into the world if we're willing to do it. And at the same time, that's exactly what can really be distracting. And that's one of my biggest things. I love health and wellness. I love writing meal plans. I love cooking. I love, helping people build those habits, stacking. At the same time, I've had, almost a 30-year career coaching in sales and business and then social media and all those type things. And I'm passionate about that too. Like, I can help anybody write out a strategy for how to launch their business and how to create funnels and do all the things. But ultimately, it really, especially at this point in my life, comes down to, I feel like I have one big baby yet to birth in the world, if you will. My kids are grown. I'm an empty nester, but I'm young and I'm vibrant and I have a lot in me. And so it's pulling all that together to put that one last baby out into the world and grow it into a thriving, functioning entity and put it out there. So what is that going to be? What's going to fuel me to do that? What's going to create impact and transformation for those clients who are out there who need and want exactly what it is I offer? So it's really constraining down and deciding. It's kind of like, if anybody's read or hasn't read, I recommended the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller of, Keller Williams, the real estate company. It's so hard. Which is going to be the one thing, but it's so important.
It's funny, even thinking that it's hard isn't helping, right?
No, it's not helping at all. Because, yeah.
I know, but when entrepreneurs, like, I think it's not just that we're as old as we are, but it's that we're also entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs love to think creatively about what's possible. And we're bursting with ideas. And especially if we worked in corporate or any place where we felt like we were wearing a straitjacket for years, to finally become free. I always feel like I'm the big letter Y in YMCA,
I do know. That's a great description. It's so true.
It's so true. Like, at first, when I was working 27 years in health education and 19 years in one place. And I always felt like I was so appreciative of editors. I was in book publishing and making programs and things like that. And I loved having editors around me. It was like such a safety net. And to start your own business, there's little editorial things that happen. I had a typo that went out in a newsletter to my whole list today. The first line. And somebody pointed out to me and made a joke about it. And I just rolled with it because, I said Tim instead of time. So Tim was having a problem today. It wasn't anything about time, the perception of time. But I guess the thing is that even though I missed having editors and more people around me to, help things go the way I wanted them to go, it was so freeing to just keep things moving and to realize that things don't have to be perfect to have an impact, But as multi-passionate people, it's very hard to constrain. So when do you catch yourself thinking, in a way that you know isn't going to help you with the task at hand? When's like a
Well,
common thing?
it's kind of interesting. One thing that I've noticed about myself is I will hone in on a decision. This is what I'm going to do. And very often that's at the end of the day. That's a habit too. It happens at the end of the day. And I wake up the next morning and I find myself automatically working on something else. It's like I made a decision and then my mind said, oh no, we're not going there. So that's one thing that I've really focused on. And I'm very fortunate. I have a 3-person mastermind group. We meet every Monday and we have for almost 5 years. And we experience a lot of the same things. And we hold each other to task for that. We hold each other accountable. It's kind of like when you hear me talking about this is what I'm committed to, but then you also hear me saying this is what I'm working on. These are my goals for the week. I want you to rein me back in. I want you to ask the question, is this moving me closer to my goal or is it moving me further away from my goal? And am I sure I know what that goal is? And that could be really helpful. Just those little tiny questions, even if you put them on a sticker on your, a sticky note on your computer, on your whiteboard or wherever that you're going to see it. Same thing with the refrigerator. If you're looking to lose weight, just that little sticky before you open it up that reminds you to ask the question, is this on your plan today or something along those lines? That can be really helpful because it really is the most important thing is getting us out of autopilot to pun another, airline phrase, get out of autopilot and, fly the plane, land it yourself, do those type things. So I think that's important. We all get caught up in default thinking. We get caught up in default habits. We default 80 to 90% of the time.
Yeah. And we also believe that multitasking is good. Like we really do believe that. And we were brought up to believe that. Like yes. I get so proud of myself when I figure out a route that can help me be the most efficient with any errands in the days when I used to leave my house. I don't leave my house as much anymore. But in those days, I was thinking, oh, I'm a Wonder Woman. If I can cram all these things in and multitask, you feel like a boss. But we all know there's so much research now that it really doesn't serve any of us to multitask like that. Do you find that you also default into thinking that way?
I have for years, but again, with the whole really focusing on my habit and using questions to guide myself along the process, I'm really weaning myself out of that. I live and die by my calendar. I'm still a paper. I use my Google Calendar too, but I'm still a paper and a to-do list. And I'm a believer if it's, what's on the calendar gets done. If it's not on the calendar, it doesn't. And I really work to slot things in specifically and set timers where I need to and shut off all the other distractions. I don't have any notifications that are going to pop up. Oh, so-and-so's on Marco Polo or they're on this or whatever. I've eliminated all of that because the task at hand is the task at hand. And it does make all the difference in the world in having it be more accurate, having it be more authentic, having it be done right the first time and not having to go back and revise different things. So I think it's so important and relevant.
It really is. Now, another thing that comes into play a lot with women our age is this realization of what life is like in terms of other people's perceptions of us at our age as a businesswoman. What's that been like for you as a woman your age, as a successful entrepreneur with a proven track record? Do you still notice that there's some negative perceptions about what you're capable of and, anything like that?
It's interesting. I would say for the most part, no, I do not run into that a lot other than what I put out there into my own brain thinking, oh, you're too old for that or who's going to that kind of thing. Really, the bulk of that comes from internally. I've not experienced that a lot externally. Thankfully.
That's interesting. I think from everybody I've spoken to and what I've read, I think more of that is coming from corporate.
I was just going to say, if I were in the corporate environment and I had a boss or I had, colleagues around me that are younger or this or that, or just graduated and come out with the newest, best way of doing everything, that would likely look different. But as a solopreneur, being the boss and deciding for myself how things are going to go and who I'm going to work with, who I'm not, who I'm going to hire, how I'm going to delegate, I've eliminated that. And that's a beautiful thing. Can I just say?
That is a beautiful thing. Now, one of the things you mentioned in your notes is really in your work of really bringing together being an entrepreneur and working on your whole self. One of the things that you focus on is really thinking about who can help you, who and how. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, there is the who before how, and there are a lot of theories out there about that, but I think it's especially important being a solopreneur in the very early days when you're launching a business. It kind of is all on you. We don't know how to hire a team. We don't even know what we need a team for. So you kind of have to jump in the beginning and begin to figure things out yourself. But I know for me, and these are even silly things, but I had two goals when I very first started my business. Number one was to hire a house cleaner. And that's the first thing I did, get rid of that task. And I've never looked back on that one. And then the second one was to buy high quality, organic, good food. Those were my two biggest goals in my business, was to have the money to be able to do that. But then over time, I realized I started hiring a little bit of part-time childcare. I was still the stay-home mom, but having somebody come in a couple of hours that would just entertain the kids while I worked at home, different things like that. Now, that was a while ago, obviously, but it's the same thing. You don't have to learn all the technical skills. You don't have to know how to create a funnel. You don't have to know all of that. You do need to begin to know what you need, but it's important to note that there are resources out there to help and support you. And there's something really beautiful, especially as women, in knowing that we are contributing to somebody else's livelihood and their family and their ability to do what they want to do and bring their creative ventures into the world too. So I love that part of it as well.
Oh, yeah, that's so good. And you mentioned in your notes juggling the kids, the career, aging parents, and life. And, there's a lot of juggling for sure. What's going on with aging parents and the way that you're able to navigate and how it may or may not be affecting the way you're running your business?
Well, it is interesting. I'm probably one of the more rare people these days that, interestingly, my entire family of origin lives in the Phoenix area. Now, we're not from here. I moved here first. They all followed me, I'm just going to say.
Well,
but my brother's
you're
here.
Very forward thinking.
Exactly. Which is a beautiful thing. I mean, at Christmas, I was with my family, my family of origin. That was crazy. I remember looking around and thinking, wow, this is pretty amazing at my age, especially, and with all the things that go on to still have that. And I recently traveled to my hometown with my brother and my parents, unfortunately, to bury my mom's sister. But at the same time, at this point in life, those can be joyous celebrations too. And it was really interesting that we were back in my hometown, driving by the house that I grew up in, reliving all of those old family memories. And that was really, really special. So, but now, they are aging. My father turned 90 in November. My mom's 86. So to be able to be there to have my own business that affords me the opportunity to, tell my dad, these are the days that are best for me. Schedule all the doctor's appointments then, to be able to be there to be their advocate. Oh my gosh. If you haven't been into the medical world lately where they talk so fast and loud and using all these different things, and my parents at their age can't even absorb half of what's being said. So to be able to be there for all of that is very rewarding, very, very rewarding. And I'm learning a lot too about navigating that world for my husband, myself, different things like that. So it's been a really interesting, very rich journey of having small children coming up, dealing with that as an entrepreneur, which I think did help me be equipped to deal with that now with my parents, of how to set up my calendar, how to set boundaries also, and be there and be able to do all those things.
That's such an interesting example that you shared, that it's not that they have diagnoses of early or just dementia, right? Or anything like that. It's not that they need different housing at this point, but it's the basics of communication with healthcare providers and being an advocate. And a lot of times when we think what's really going on and what's going to suck up our time and how are we going to have to make new schedules, we think it's the big things. But sometimes it's just helping get connected, helping understand. That was a great example.
Good. It really is. I'll tell you what, I feel deeply for anyone in the aging world without somebody there who can be their advocate. I see such an importance in that because, boy, I mean, I have to ask them to slow down and repeat things. And sometimes there have been a few times that I looked at my parents and I said, "Did you catch that?" And they're both like, "No."
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what happens? That this is how medications get messed up and, the care afterwards or any of that type stuff. So it's kind of alarming out there for sure. But I'm
Yeah.
very grateful to be there.
Oh, that's wonderful. Also, you get nervous when you go to the doctor, right? And there's that power thing, plus there's the nervousness, and then just plain all people need to slow down.
Well, they do. And I not sure why, but I was born a critical thinker and I was born one of those kids that asks why. In fact, I've alienated a few doctors in my life who thought I was questioning their authority or their education or whatever. And it's no, I'm one of those people. I need to understand. When I understand, I do better. I have to have an understanding. I'm not one that just follows the playbook necessarily. So that's helpful too, to really understand all the moving parts, because especially, my dad, thankfully, he's the one who's 90. His mom lived to 95. I keep warning my kids. I'm like, look, I come from really good stock. I'm going to be around a while. You might as well just plan on it. And he's going strong. My mom has more issues, but it's the same thing. It's realizing, as great as our medical system is, this provider doesn't really talk to this provider. And thank goodness for the pharmacist who can look at everything and see what's going to contraindicate. And so it's good to be able to have all those other resources and, pull it all together. But yeah, it's interesting.
No, it was a really great example. So one thing that you mentioned in your notes is that you're no longer willing to play small and pretend that your voice and perspective don't matter. Can you tell me a little bit about why you wrote that?
I still am very fortunate in my life that for whatever reason, from the time I was in middle school, I always had women mentors, whether it was a teacher, one of my mom's coworkers, somebody has always been somewhere in the 15 to 20 year range older than me, probably 10 to 20 years older than me, that were just there. I didn't ask them to be there. They just were there with wise words of wisdom, to really give me things to think about, not to tell me what to do. And I look back on that and I think, oh my gosh, guess what? That's me now. It's my turn to be that person, that voice out there. So I'm not willing to play small and pretend like my voice doesn't matter, pretend like all these decades now of experience from, career to moving a lot with aviation to children to all of that doesn't have opportunity to offer something to somebody. And one thing that I've learned, I'm very fortunate to have a very close relationship with my daughter, who's 28. And we're very close. We always have been. We've traveled the world together. It's been a beautiful thing we've been able to have. But I'm a fixer too. So that my personality type is like, if you come to me with a problem, the first thing I'm going to do is fix it. And that's not often what people really want. So we've developed, and I've developed this with my clients and with other people, to be able to say, am I here just to listen, or are you looking for feedback? And now my daughter, that kind of becomes our thing. And she'll laugh and say, well, maybe both. And if I do ask for advice, I might not take it. Fair enough. Fair enough. But there are different points of view, old perspectives or experience that isn't necessarily dated and wrong just because it was 20, 30 years ago. There's still great advice out there. And so I want to be that. It's kind of funny. I have found some of the people on my podcast who listen will write in, and they're 30 years younger than me, and say, especially I have a Pilot Wife podcast too. And the same thing. These are young women just coming into this profession. And now they have social media to contend with too, which is a whole nother beast, things that I didn't have to deal with and a lot of that. And I hear such great things from them. You're so helpful to us. And I didn't understand that. And now I know how to better do this. And, there's a big joke about how it's like the pilot in command. They're the pilot in command on the airplane, and you're the pilot in command at home. And then there's what's called the re-entry, right? They come back in, and it's kind of like it upsets the apple cart because they still want to run the show here. And you're like, no, it doesn't work that way. So, there's a lot of blending all of that together that can be interesting.
Oh, that's great. And, another thing that is just so clear is how mentoring can be such a fulfilling experience for women our age. So taking on that mentorship role, really appreciating that you do have something to share, that you're not just older, you're older and wiser. And I always say, I have 3 sons in their 20s, and sometimes, like you, I can't help myself. I am a fixer too. I think very quickly. And they'll just say to me, Mom, I wasn't asking for your opinion. And I say, that's okay. I can't help myself. You don't have to change anything, but I need to say it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't take it personally, and they go with it too. I can't help myself. I get that you weren't asking my opinion.
But you got it.
But
no charge.
I can't help myself. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, is there anything that you would say to somebody in midlife who is, like just a pearl of wisdom for somebody who knows that they could improve some of their self-development, their self-image, their confidence, and they are a full-blown entrepreneur, and they're just getting a sense that there may be a problem, that if they worked on it more, they would see a lot of positive results?
Well, you brought the word or the phrase in perfectly with self-image. We all have a self-image. And sometimes when we hear that word, we have this tendency to think, oh, well, I like who I am. I'm this, I'm that, I'm everything else. And I've had a client that I had to work with a lot on this. It's like, I'm not suggesting if you're here and you want to get to here, this self-image has to grow to this self-image, your future self, right? Your future self, you have to grow to that. That doesn't mean that you don't like who you are here. It just means that some things have to shift. So I really like to tell people, you're here, you want to get here. What are the habits that person has? How do they wake up in the morning? How do they start their day? What are their thoughts? How do they pivot negative thoughts? How do they live their life? How do they close out their day? How do they do all those things that has them achieving at this level? Because if you have the self-image of what that person has, you would be at that point. So if you're not there yet, we want to look at what's holding us back. All of us have those things that hold us back from a lot of different things. That's part of life. That's the growth journey. That's the beauty and the richness of life. So it's really identifying that. Who do I need to become to achieve what it is that I want? And again, it doesn't matter in a relationship, in your health and wellness, which I know for me at this point in my life, that's super important to me. I want to go to grandchildren weddings and great-grandchildren weddings. I have a lot of things I want to do. And so I have to take care of this physical body too, as well as the mental aspect of it, but taking care of myself to get to that point. So it's really looking at where I am now, where I want to be, and what is getting in the way that's preventing me from being there. So every day, spend that little bit of time on yourself and say, what can I do today that's going to get me closer to being that person, to that goal?
So good. Well, Jackie, you've shared a lot of things. Thank you so much for taking the time from your day and just being so authentic and giving us great perspective about what you do, what it's been like to be a pilot's wife, how you've been so successful in several businesses. I love that. And I love also that you pointed out from your daughter's perspective, she was raised by people that didn't have traditional jobs and how that may have affected her, and just your perspective on all of it. It's been super fun to get to know you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. That's it for now. If you're listening and loving what you hear, please like and subscribe. Reviews are great too and much appreciated. And if you're a woman in the middle who's 50 or over and an entrepreneur and would like to also come on the show, please go to www.midlifeinterviews.com and fill out an application. We'd love to have you on to share your story. Thanks so much for listening. It's never too late for you to put yourself on your agenda. I'm Suzy Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you again soon. Now, real quick before we say goodbye, if you are connecting with the show, I'd love to invite you to a happiness breakthrough coaching session. It's my laser-focused coaching call that will help you get clear about what's getting in your way as a woman in the middle entrepreneur and confident about your next steps to more happiness in your next chapter. Head over to www.nextchapterbreakthrough.com. Talk to you soon.